Hi, this is Kieran from Future Performance Technology Limited. So we're using our ViPER Coach immersive tactics board to just do a short session on in possession and looking at a simple principle system to designate roles and responsibilities or work with players to get them to start relating and thinking about certain roles and responsibilities that you would want in game situations. It's based around a 1-2-3 player system, and essentially what we're doing is trying to get a situation where in any given scenario on the pitch at any given time, if we freeze the play, then each individual player on the pitch will be able to identify as either a number one, a number two, and a number three. And that way we control and simplify the information that we're giving players. And it's used as a foundational framework to allow players to start to develop their game understanding, game learning, tactical work, etc. So we're working with the blue team. We can see that the holding midfielder in a 4-3-3, it doesn't really matter what formation it is essentially, but for representation here, 4-3-3 system. And we're looking at the player on the ball, which is the holding midfielder. If we go to our tactics board, we can just highlight the player on the ball. Now this player is the number one. So in any given situation in possession, the number one is the player that's on the ball. The number twos can be more than one player, and they're players that are close to the number one. And we'll talk about the roles and responsibilities for those. So they will be within a shortish distance, and you don't have to be exact, but where a potential pass can be made, a short pass can be made to link play, start the play, depending on where the position of the player is. Then you've got the number threes. We're just doing it as a big circle here to just outline it. And they're the ones that are on the periphery. So they're not really affecting the play directly in terms of the player on the ball and where the player is situated. They're a little bit away from the ball somewhere else on the football pitch. Now, I quite like having the grids in because it allows me to start to get areas, subsection areas of the pitch where we can maybe develop players' understanding a little bit further. If we want to start to introduce a little bit more complexity into how we want to play. So I'm going to keep it on here, but if we look at the player on the ball, he's the number one. So what role would I assign this player? So has he got space, time to play, pass, run with the ball? Can he play forward? If not, can he play sideways? If not, is there options behind to start the play again? Okay, change the point of attack, reset, etc. Now, the important thing is that you as a coach can assign really whatever you want to this. This is just my, the players that I've worked with at professional level, some of the things that I would assign them in terms of the roles. But essentially the 1-2-3 principle is the same. It's just how you frame up the words that you might use, the guidelines that you want to give, the narrative of how you want your team to play. So we've got our number one on the ball. Can he play forward? Can he run forward, etc.? Can we move forward as a team? Okay, with this player on the ball. The number twos we defined as the players that are around the ball. Okay, close to the player, the number one on the ball. So you can see that we've highlighted 4 players. We've got our 2 players in defensive positions. Now, because they're deeper, they'll be thinking of 2 things. Just if we think really simplistically, 2 things. Am I in a good position to potentially receive the ball should the number one need it? So in this situation, I might want to just be in a position to potentially act on that. You can see that that player then would move into this position. Okay, that's fine. But also, really importantly as well, is what happens if the player on the ball loses the ball. So what if my teammate loses the ball? Am I in a good defensive position to cover space or potentially mark the player? So in this case, it's the centre forward that I'm up against. So those 2 things thinking about as a number 2. Same with the right centre back as well. Then if we look at the number 2s that are in advanced positions, am I in a good position to maybe receive the ball into space? So potentially we might be looking to receive the ball in sort of these areas. I can come on to it. but essentially, am I in a position to receive a short pass where I can then maybe turn and go forward? So that's the kind of number two. It's really simple again, thinking about how we would define these roles. And then we have the number threes. So we have the three forwards in a 4-3-3, the two fullbacks, and not forgetting the goalkeeper. Okay, now the goalkeeper's a number three because he's quite far away from the player on the ball. And he'd be thinking about, okay, what happens if we lose the ball? Am I communicating with my two central defenders to make sure that we've got these two centre forwards covered? And then how we can make sure that any counter-attacks we can potentially sweep up and win the ball and retain possession, etc., etc. We've got some fullbacks in wide areas. So as a number three, I can't really receive a short pass because of my distance and because of the area of the pitch I'm in and in relation to where the ball is. But I might be able to receive a pass that's a bit longer. So it might be a forward run off the ball that I make to be able to receive that pass. So I might see a movement here that coincides with a bit of movement from my wide player and a bit of rotation. And then, seeing that, we might see a pass that arrives in this position. And then we can look at, obviously manufactured, but we can look at potentially then crossing the ball, depending on where the positions of the forwards are. So essentially, we're looking at these number threes as indirectly involved in the play. So they might be, if you think about the game in phases, first phase might be I can pass to shortest pass to a player, and then I can receive the next pass. Or it might be a ball that's played into forward areas. So we can see a ball played through to the centre forward in this area, and he can be receiving it and then get players running off him. Or it might be a bit of rotational movement, working together in pairs. So if we think about the relationship of these players here, and can we work on rotation and maybe get a switch of play into wide areas? So, and again, whatever kind of information that relates to you and your philosophy, you can attribute those to your numbers. What I've tried to do is simplify it for players so that they can actually say, right at the beginning of this foundational learning in any system, is I know that if I'm on the ball, we're in possession, I'm a number one. I know that if I'm around the player who's in possession of the ball, I'm a number two. I know that if I'm quite a bit away from the ball and I can't receive a shortish pass, I'm a number three. So very quickly, each player can identify themselves with a number. And then it's up to you about how you start to build the foundational knowledge of what's the roles and responsibilities that you want to attribute and relate to each of those numbers, and then how you build that. And then you can build upon that and break those down into more complex potential options that those players have. And one of the key things to think about is how the methodology and the formula works is if we say that the number four is in possession of the ball, and we have then I can't go forward. For example, I'm now going to pass to the left centre back. He then becomes the number one. So can you see how that role has changed? He's gone from being a number two because he hasn't had the ball. So he's gone from being a number two to now getting the ball and being a number one. The left full back, who originally was potentially a number three, because this pass has been made, now becomes a number two. So now he's thinking, as the ball is moving around the pitch, so as the ball moves around the pitch, I start to fluctuate between being a number one, a number two, and a number three. And if we can build foundational guides on what does that mean for me when I am a number one, a number two, or a number three, then we can start to really become creative with how we build the game understanding for players to be able to take ownership on the pitch and start to make really effective decisions.